Okay, well, welcome everybody to the October Juried Exhibition Night tonight. Channel City Camera Club. We're happy to have all of you here, and I'm going to turn things over to Stuart Wilson, our Director of Judges, to introduce tonight's judges. Stuart?
All right, thank you, Bill. I have sort of shortened the bios from what you could see. If you want to see the entire description of each person's biographic history, you can go to our newsletter. So first of all, I'd like to introduce Christy Goodsight. Christy, could you just say hi so you're on the screen?
Hi.
There you go. All right, thank you very much. Christy holds a BA in honors in psychology from Pennsylvania State University and an MS in photography from Brooks Institute, where she then was on the faculty for 9 years until its closure in 2016. Christy has worked on post-production projects for ad campaigns for Nike and CoverGirl, as well as feature films and music videos, some of which have won honors such as a Clio Award, MTV Music Award, a BAFTA, BAFTA Award. I had to look that up. It's British Academy of Film Award. So that's very prestigious. Her images have also been published in Town and Country, Martha Stewart Living, Santa Barbara Magazine, C Magazine, and Vogue.com. So Christy, thank you so much for judging for us again.
Okay.
Our next judge is Elliot Crowley. Elliot, could you just say hi?
Hello, everybody. That's me.
There we go. Well, let's see.
Did that work? You need me to
There
keep
we
talking?
go. We got
Okay,
you.
I'll keep talking.
All right. Elliot received a BA in photography from Brooks Institute in 1976.
Ooh.
For many years, he worked in Los Angeles, serving major corporate clients, including Sun-Made Raisins, Patagonia, along with a host of fashion designers and many others. In the 1990s, Elliot got married and moved back to Santa Barbara, continuing his commercial work with such clients as T. Rowe Price and Bank of America. In 2005, he was asked to join the faculty at Brooks Institute. In 2009, Elliot received an MFA degree in photography from Academy of Art University in San Francisco. So Elliot, thank you so much for being our judge tonight.
My pleasure. I'm happy to be here.
And our club judge tonight is Ron Williams. Ron, could you just say hi?
Hi, good to be here.
There you go. Okay. Ron worked as a professional physicist starting in 1961. Then in 1975, turned to interdisciplinary research in health economics and software development at UCSB. His photographic interest began as a college newspaper photographer in 1957 using 4x5 film. That must have been a speed graphic, I'm guessing. Ron joined Channel City Camera Club in 2007 and is also a member of Santa Barbara Art Association and has been honored by awards from both groups. So Ron, thank you very much for being our judge tonight.
You're welcome.
All right, turn it back to Bill.
Tonight's Juried Exhibition Night. Scoring rubric, the judges have seen this for each of the images that they have scored. Altered reality is the first category. We have 6 images for altered reality. The first image is Kala's Night and Day, and this is critiqued by Elliot Crowley.
Okay, I really like this image. The thing that I like about the altered reality of it is that it appears as though these calla lilies were lit differently and yet put together into the same composition. The background is neutral enough. I like the color that's in there, but I'm mostly intrigued by the choices that the photographer made to light one of them, like the one on the right, with a brighter light than the ones on the left. Both of them have wonderful texture and quality of light on them, even though they're both very, very different.
The score's 21.
This next image is Douglas Preserve, and this is critiqued by Ron Williams.
Well, this is altered. It's altered reality because it looks like it's based on a nature original picture by texturization. the texturization is turned up quite a bit. Might be a little distracting to some viewers. The composition is nice with a good left-right balance. And the curving path leads us from the dark area to the light area. So the title might have been called something more innovative instead of Douglas Preserve, perhaps like Into the Light, and it draws the user or the viewer into the light. That leads a peaceful mood if we can overlook those many bright splotches at the top, and that might be distracting to some people. So I would suggest to improve this, you might try to just clone out some of those white spots through the leaves. I know the sun's shining through there, but it's not nature, so go ahead and clone them out.
The score was 21.
Next image is Goleta Beach, and this is critiqued by Christy Goodsight.
It's very apocalyptic and a little science fiction-y when I saw it. The two things that popped out to me that were a little distracting was there's a tangent line right on where his head meets the horizon, and there's also one where the garbage can hits the pier. So that flattens out the image. If we didn't have those tangents, I think the image would have a little more dimension. I like that the light was on the subject. And I appreciate the altered reality where it feels very like a nuclear bomb thing, radioactive on it. For me, it was just the tangents, but I like the green effect on it. I think it makes it a little interesting.
Score was 18.
The next image is Hendry's Foggy Morning. This is critiqued from Elliot Crawley.
Well, I really like this image. I like the layering effect that the photographer was able to achieve, and with whatever he or she has layered on top, and yet let the writers reveal through it. It's a nice way to add texture and depth and sense of place to a photograph when you add a background in like that. I think this was really well done. The composition is terrific. I love the little rocks my eyes dance around on, and the 3 horses with 2 riders in the distance. But I really like the atmospheric quality that was created with the altering of this reality.
Score was 24.
Next image is Southern Bee Eaters, and this is critiqued by Ron Williams.
Well, what a really good way to use a bird photograph. Most of the time we get a good bird photograph, we just want to show the birds, but this is a wonderful color palette as it ranges to complement the colors of the birds. The composition is pleasing as well. I like the way the branch arches across, gives a nice curvature to it. The extraction of the subjects from the original background was done very well. In short, I think it's the photographer was quite successful in transforming a nature shot into art. So kudos for that. I can't really see how to improve this, except perhaps for softening up the feathers on the right-hand bird just a bit. Good job.
Score is 23.
The next image is Zigzag, critique by Christy Goodsight.
I like this. This was interesting. It's really abstract, and it kept my eye on the photo a while, just trying to figure out what it was. Technically, for me, it looks like the liquify tool might have been used a little bit on the zigzag areas, and I can kind of see kind of the pulling of the pixels in that. So if that was a little smoother, maybe that would have been a little bit nicer. And for me, I think vision would have been a little nicer if it was pulled up on the top. Am I breaking up?
Yep.
If it was pulled up on the top, I feel like there's a little too much space on the top. compositionally, but it's interesting and it's abstract. I like the piece.
Score was 18.
Jeez.
Okay, we had 4 accepted images. Callis Night and Day, Inez Roberts. Douglas Preserve, Bill Banning. Henry's Foggy Morning, Chris Seaton. Southern Bee Eaters, Jeff Lipschitz.
That's the end of the accepted images. Our next category is the nature category. Just a note that our nature category this time included a special assignment to have animals in groups of 3, like or same non-domesticated animals in groups of 3 or more. And this is Back Away Pretty Boy, critique by Elliot Crowley.
Well, I really like the title. That's a good title. But what is really nice about this photograph, I think, is the lighting on it. We get wonderful texture. It's golden hour. We see plenty of definition in the shadows. The whites on that one bird are handled very nicely. The shallow depth of field adds to the isolation of the animals against the background. And I think this works pretty well. There's action, there's clarity, there's focus, and the active framing allows me to just sort of sit and look at these 3 birds against the ocean. So I'd say well done.
Score is 19.
Next image is Conference, critiqued by Ron Williams.
Well, the word that popped into my head when I first saw this was conversation. So the title conference is very apt. My second thought was that as nature photographers, we're usually told to avoid so-called butt shots. But here it works really well, not only in terms of the theme, where they are talking to each other, but also they're not unattractive butt shots. So that worked okay. I guess I learned something from this. I usually avoid doing that. The only problem is with the lighting, with the eyes in total shade, dark shadows. So the photographer ideally would have used a fill-in flash there, but that may not be possible in that particular venue. For in terms of perhaps another subjective way to improve it from my perspective is to not crop off the hooves. The legs are chopped off there. And similarly, the antelope on the left, if you're showing the butts on the right, then you should show the butts on the left.
Score is 21.
Our next image is Everything's Ducky. And the critique is Christy Gutzeit.
Really like the use of pattern in this image. I think black and white was an interesting call, especially with the pattern on the ducks. For me, though, it was a little distracting. The flat lighting and then all the ripples in the water, it's a little hard to make out the ducks. So I kind of bounced between it. Maybe it would have worked better in color, but I did like the pattern that was popping in it. Also, the pattern's repeating, but there's nothing popping out where maybe if the other duck was looking back or one of the ducks was turned the other way, it might have had a little more interest within the image.
Score is 20.
Next image is Five Feathered Friends. This critique by Elliot Crowley.
Well, there's wonderful stop action here. Obviously, this frozen time depiction of these birds in mid-flight is, I think, extremely well done. The clarity on each of the birds, your depth of field was perfect. And having them grouped so closely together, it looks like they're just about to hit wings. They look like maybe the Blue Angels or something are flying, doing aerobatics in the sky. I think it's a really well done nature shot. And there's really no sense of place, except they look like I imagine they're sandpipers, right? These are sandpipers. That must be the ocean in the background. So there's enough visual clues for me, for this viewer, to figure out what's going on. So well done again.
Score is 24.
Next image is Flamingo Showdown, critique by Ron Williams.
So our special assignment requires at least 3 animals, and the photographer has fulfilled that condition. Another requirement for the nature category is to tell a story, and this image does that quite well. Unfortunately, however, not all 3 subjects are in the same plane, so the eyes are not in focus on 2 of the birds. Well, certainly not on the upper bird on the left. The lower bird on the left is in focus. So that's a problem by using a fairly large aperture. And if they had lowered the aperture a bit, of course, the background would have been sharper, and probably didn't want to do that. But I think it's necessary in nature shots to have all 3 eyes in focus. So that's about, I would say, to improve it. The only other thing I can see is perhaps burning in that stump on the right a little bit, so it's not quite so white, and drawing the eye towards it.
Score was 20.
Next image is Giraffes, critique by Christy Goodsight. You there, Christy?
I'm here. Yeah, this was one of my favorite images. This is absolutely beautiful. The light is just gorgeous on this. The beam in the back is just, it looks like a painting. It's absolutely beautiful. I love that they're not all looking in the same direction. The one on the left is actually down drinking the water, and there's light and separation between his head and the water, which is beautiful. The composition's nice. It's kind of off to the right a little bit, so it's not centered perfectly. There's room for your eye to move around. It's just absolutely beautiful. I mean, if there's anything I would say is it'd be nice to have just a little bit more light on the face of the giraffe that's drinking from the water. But overall, it was beautiful.
Score was 23.
Next photo is Guardians. Let's see. Guardians, and this critique is by Elliot Crawley.
Oh yeah, I actually really enjoy this photograph. I think the mud and the monochromatic palette of this really fits nicely in. I think that to improve it, if we could put some active framing in there and lose the shoreline on both the top and the bottom, we would force the viewer to try and understand more about where these animals actually are. I mean, when you look at it this way, you know that they're right near the shore and that they're in this small wallow of water. But if we could have just lost that information on the bottom and the top, we wouldn't know how big this area is that they're hanging out in. And the other thing that really thrills me about this photograph are those eyes. The eyes on the one on the right, they're looking right at me. I think he's thinking about me, and I'm getting a little bit afraid of him. And the one on the left has an even meaner look. So they're obviously protecting their young against the photographer. But I think the improvement that I would make would be to turn it into more of a panoramic and lose the shoreline on both the top and the bottom.
Score is 21.
Next, oop. Hold on. Okay, not sure what happened there. The next image is Hen Mallard and her escort.
So this is a good composition that captures a decisive moment. Birds in flight are a real challenge, and it is, however, becoming easier as cameras and lenses continue to improve. But still, it takes skill, practice, and a considerable amount of luck. The photographer did a real nice job with the lighting here. The eyes have catch lights, and they are, there's room on the right for them to fly into the frame. Still, the image falls a little bit short of perfection in that it's a bit of softness to the ducks, and that may be due to the 1/500th of a second shutter speed. With this online method, I can look at the camera settings, and for birds in flight, I find that 1/1000th is really a minimum that should be used. So that may explain part of it. It's neat that they're all in the same film plane, so they're all fairly sharp. The only way to improve it is to eliminate that drake behind the hen. If we just had those 3 ducks there, it would be a much stronger image. But after all, this is Mother Nature. We don't always get to choose what the composition is, but good job.
Score is 23.
Next image is Kowtow, and this is critiqued by Christy Gutzeit.
I like the story behind it. I like that they're bowing, and then there's one alone bowing. I think this could take on a variety of meanings, so I really enjoyed that. For me, there's kind of a yellow-green shift to the image that's a little distracting for me. It's a little muddy looking. I think also the depth of field, if it was a little more shallow, I think might have pulled the animals out a little bit more and have a little more depth to the image. It's kind of blending into the background and it's looking a little two-dimensional to me. I don't mind that it's cropped into the animals too much, because it's really focusing on kind of the shape and the bowing of the head, and that's really what it's about for me in the image. And I do like the composition where it's kind of hovering more a little higher on the image, so you get that feeling of looking down on the image. But the color, for me, the color, that greenish yellow tint just felt a little too off for me.
Score is 17.
Next image is Leap of Faith, and this one is critiqued by Elliot Crowley.
Yeah, this is, all about timing and that sort of thing. And what are these called? Wildebeests or what are they called? Buffalo, water buffaloes. Anyway, the one that's just about to leap into the water is the key to this picture, I think. And this is another case where I think some active framing would be employed better. The one that's in the water on the left side that's splashing around is kind of a distraction for me, because I would rather get into the risk that these animals are taking by making this leap of faith. And that would be zooming in closer on those animals that are just about to make the leap. And so getting a little bit closer, zooming in and focusing on you've got to think these animals are in fear for their life to jump into this river, but they have to do it. So that, I think, is the story that should try to be told. And we're just falling a little bit short of that without getting right on top of them. But it's a matter of timing and being in the right place at the right time. And I know that that's the difficult thing to do when you're cruising around Africa in a open Jeep with a group of people, and you have to take your pictures as you find them.
Score was 19.
Next image is Lineup. It's critiqued by Ron Williams.
This fulfills the assignment with a pleasing diagonal composition. The photographer's done an admirable job in keeping all 5 ducks in focus, even though they're not in the same film plane or same plane. The colors are subdued with the low angle of the sun providing nice side lighting. And we can see all their eyes, which is good at this type of light. So the overall mood is quite pleasant. The only way I would think of immediately to improve this is maybe slide the vibrancy slider a bit to the right to bring out a little more color. Mallards usually have real nice green heads.
Score was 21.
Next image is Little Quackers. This is critiqued by Christy Goodsite.
Super cute image. They're adorable. My eye goes right to that middle one that has some really pretty kind of little side light on them. Overall, I know it's hard because there's green grass and it's reflecting green from the water, but just the overall green tint on the image was a little distracting for me. So I would have tried to use the filter on camera filter, neutralize the image, as well as the time of day or even positioning. Some of the highlight little hot spots are a little distracting and your eye kind of bounces around. So possibly a more shallower depth of field, or waiting until maybe they moved a little farther away from some of the hot spots might have helped soften up the image. So it's not too distracting on the eye.
Score was 22.
Next image is Nestlings. It's critiqued by Elliot Crawley.
Well, I liked this image when I first saw it. I think that it's a wonderful abstraction of the idea of these little birds in their nest, and it's an interesting angle to be able to get right down on top of them. I think that if we could have darkened the nest and given them a sort of a spotlight to live in, it would have helped this help contain me into this picture, because there's so much texture on them and so much texture around them. And usually I would say I like that kind of abstraction, but I just think that darkening down the nest, especially the bright areas of the nest, and keeping them nice and bright would have contained my eye in the picture. I find myself following one of the tangent pieces of straw out of the picture, and then I have to come back. I do wish there was a highlight in the eye. I'd love to know how this was lit. It feels as though it was lit with a flash, an on-camera flash, or just some really lucky bright light on these animals. And so anyway, that I'd like to know that, but it's, it's perfectly satisfactory,
Score is 22.
The next image is River Otters, critiqued by Ron Williams.
Well, sea otters can be found close by, like in Morro Bay and other places near Santa Barbara, but I don't think I've ever seen a river otter, so it's educational for me to see a photo of them. I'll have to say, however, that I don't think they're as photogenic as their seafaring cousins, perhaps because their whiskers are less dense and not gray and striking like sea otters. Also, as they're swimming rapidly in this scene, there's a lot of water and not much otter. So it doesn't, it's primarily a water picture. And also the fourth otter, which actually has a really nice expression, is kind of the odd man out, and we keep going back and forth between him and the other two. So I think that I would suggest that this be cropped heavily, and just to have the two otters in the upper right, and that would increase the otter to water ratio and give more emphasis to the nice low angle sunlight on those two otters on the right hand side.
Score was 20.
Next image is Staring at Me. This critique by Christy Goodsight.
I like the use of perspective and the lens you chose for this. It's a little wide angle. For me, the lighting, it's a little too hot in the front. And I love the guy in the back with his mouth open, but you kind of barely see him because all my eye wants to do is go right to that hot spot in the middle. I really like the overall color palette in this image, but I'm not sure if this was a camera issue, but there's a little haloing just technically for me that's distracting on the rocks, between the rocks and the background. So I think if maybe a little more, if the flash was just a little off camera, or even just a little bit off, so it wasn't directly in their face so hard in the center, I think it would have been a little bit stronger for me. But overall, it's an interesting shot.
Score is 23.
Next image is Triplets, critique by Elliot Crowley.
Yeah. Okay. So, a photograph is photography is a fast and efficient way to make a document, to record a document. Like on my phone, I have a picture of a bag of dog food, and I look at it every time I'm at the pet store to make sure that I get the right dog food. And that is because it's a fast and efficient way to make a record. I can photograph a bag of dog food and then reference it. And in this photograph, if this is a reference photograph for the binomial nomenclature of these ground squirrels or whatever these rodents are, then I think that the photographer has accomplished that if it is to be a reference photograph. But a photograph, when we talk about a photograph, we talk about the gestalt. And that means everything that's in the photograph is the responsibility of the photographer. And so therefore, when a photograph is like this is put up, the photographer has to claim everything that's here. And so while it's cute that there are these three rodents, squirrels or whatever they are, that have posed for him and that he was able to get, or her, able to get the photograph, I am dramatically interrupted by the large amount of brown dirt that is a major part of this photograph, in the very center of this photograph, and it makes it very difficult for me to want to give this much of a lifetime. I mean, a lifetime is the amount of time I'm willing to look at a photograph, but it is a good document. It is a good record of these animals, if that's what you were trying to do.
Score is 17.
The next photo is Turtle Soup, critique by Ron Williams.
Well, a creative title to a well-executed, the water sections and perfect time of day light make it quite successful. The composition is excellent. We move from left to right, and study of the 10, 9 of them have upward looking poses. And there's a lot to learn about turtle anatomy here. The color and light shadow balance are outstanding. I can't think of a way to improve this photograph. Nice job.
And Ron, you have another butt shot.
Yeah, right. A real butt shot there. That's why I said turtle anatomy.
Score is 21.
The next image is Tuxes in a Row, critiqued by Christy Goodsight.
Another grouping of of ducks. What I did like about this one is the reflection of the blue in the water really helps separate the ducks from the water, whereas the other one I was having a hard time getting enough separation from the ducks. For me though, it's this use of pattern, but it's just a repeating pattern where it would have been a little more interesting if one of the ducks was turning his head back, something to keep me in the image where it feels a little not as dynamic. I like that they're all really sharp. The color in their eyes is amazing. The capture of it. It feels a little tilted, super minor, but well, those are my thoughts on the image.
Score is 21.
The next image is Who's Got Our Six? This is critiqued by Elliot Crowley.
Well, and these are odd animals, these ostriches or emus or whatever they are, and they appear to be in a natural environment. I like the expression and the fact that they're kind of all individuals and yet they're all together. I think that what I'm bumping into here is the brightness of the photograph, and it's bright on them and it's bright on the background. And if we had just added some more meat to this photograph, I think that it would be greatly improved. It just feels too hot to me, and to bring it down, to move some of those sliders a little further to the left to follow on what Ron was saying about the sliders, but that I think would really help. I do like the depth of field is working for me. The abstraction of the grasses in front of them, giving that layering effect. There is a certain amount of plasticity here in the sense that the animals' heads appear to be closer to me than the background, even though it's a two-dimensional object. The heads of these animals appear in front of the canvas, and that is well done, and I think would also be enhanced with some darkening. I think add some meat to this picture. Maybe lower the contrast and darken it down a little bit, and you could really increase that plasticity feel, as well as making the ostrich heads more the subject than the abstraction that you've created here with all of this chaos in the background, and the wonderful chaos in the background and the foreground, and there's a perfect amount of focus on our subject. So that would be my suggestion, is just give it some more.
Score is 20.
That's the end of submissions. We have accepted images.
11 accepted images. Conference, Avo Court. 5 Feathered Friends, Steve Cowell. Giraffes, Bob Rottenberg. Guardians, Chris Seaton. Hen Mallard and her escort, Dawn Green. Lineup, Stephen Lewis. Little Quackers, Stuart Wilson. Nestlings, Ron Ablis. Staring at Me, Inez Roberts. Turtle Soup, Stephen Sherrill. Tuxes in a Row, Ron Williams.
That's the end of the accepted images. Our next category is the open category. The first picture is Broken Flag, critique by Ron Williams.
Well, this is really creative and apropos of our challenging times. It's a classic case of a picture conveying 1,000 words. Indeed, that's literally the message here, because there's all those cut up newspapers, and there probably are 1,000 words or more there. So much ingenuity went into the construction of this photo, and much forethought and planning, including the low angle side lighting, which produces a three-dimensional effect. My only suggestion for improvement would be to increase the exposure by about 1 stop.
Score is 22.
Next image is Dawn, and the critique is by Christy Goodsight.
I absolutely love this image. I loved how soft it was. I love the color palette. It looks almost like a painting. The background is beautiful on it. I love that I don't see their heads. It's kind of quirky, and it's not your typical just documentation of these birds. I didn't understand the title, how it went with it, but just from a lighting perspective, I thought it was beautiful. And it's a little odd. Like I know what I'm looking at, but I don't really understand it. A little small suggestion is there's a little tension tangent point where the body's touching on the right-hand side. So I either would have cropped into it or possibly given it a little bit of breathing work. But that would be my suggestion.
Score is 21.
The next image is I've Got Fish, Elliot Crawley critiquing.
Yeah, this is a really nice photograph of a market, an open air market in some, looks like Asian country. And we got a nice expression on the woman. I mean, we see these kinds of things when we travel, and they're so foreign to us, but so normal to them. My only, I think the composition works out nicely, and there's good color. My only comment technically would be that it's a little bright on the white areas. I think that the fish in the foreground and some of the fish, squids or whatever they are in the background, and almost the center top third of the picture are so bright I can't tell what they are. And what's really wonderful and beautiful about these places that have all these repeating patterns, this rhythm of pattern of the fish and the shrimp and the whatever else is there, is that all of those things have wonderful texture to them. And I think that because the highlights are so blown out in so many different areas, what we're losing is the texture. Although I love the picture of the girl, the woman in the blue, and I don't even mind the woman in the background because she just becomes part of the background. But I think I'm really bumping into the highlights and lack of detail in all of that wonderful detail.
Score is 21.
The next photograph is Kelso Dunes, critiqued by Ron Williams.
It's a perfect time of day and a pleasing subject matter. Classic composition of foreground, middle ground, and background, all of which are reasonably in focus due to the use, again, we can look at the settings on this, use a small aperture of f/22. So there may be a little bit of lens diffraction that contributes to the overall softness of the image. It's not a lot, but that may not be necessary to use such a small aperture. The scene's a little dark for my taste, especially in the lower section of the frame. One way to remedy that would be to crop out the lower part just starting above that little stick that sticks up. There's quite a bit of distraction there anyway, and I don't see that does a lot of good. And that would make it more into a panorama, which I think would be more pleasing.
Score is 20.
The next image is Latvian Bridge, critique by Christy Goodsight.
This one jumped out a lot. The light and the electric color blue, really, really beautiful, interesting. So yeah, I could just zone out and stare at it for a while. One small thing though is the lights on the left and the right, just that maybe a little bit of crop into it a little tighter might have made it just on the left and the right side, might have really drew your eye into the bridge. It's a little distracting. I do like the reflection in the water, just what's being reflected. I don't know, maybe this could have been an interesting image with a tighter crop and really focused on the blue, or turn it all the way counterclockwise or clockwise and just looked at it from a different angle. Could have been a little more interesting, because it's such a cool subject matter and it's a very kind of static, perfectly in the middle composed shot. But that color was, and really good at grabbing that color. It doesn't look like you lost your gamut too much on that color too, so you held how electric it was.
Score is 22.
The next photograph is Layers of Service. This is critiqued by Elliot Crowley.
Yeah, well, this reminds me of a whole series of work that I did on walls myself, and it was the patina of the wall that interested me, and they sort of, and they stand alone as individual photographs. And that's what I want to talk about with this one, is that while there is all of this wonderful texture and all of this wonderful patina and color and light and shadow going on this two-dimensional subject, there's wonderful abstraction, but there's no landing point. I don't see a face, or I don't see the one place where this surface was dented, or where it had an impact of some other thing besides weather. So I wonder what it was besides the texture and the color that attracted the photographer, in a sense that there just isn't, something in one of the third. I'm looking around for that place to sort of stop and go, oh, look at that. But this can be a wonderful piece of work that will land nicely in the background of a portrait or background of some other photograph. And so it may be used as a textural layer in something in the future. And for that reason alone, it's worth taking, and it's worth having. I think there's a lot of stuff going on here, but I just want a place to rest my eyes, and I don't get it.
Score is 22.
Next image is Lisbon Twilight, critiqued by Ron Williams.
Nice color palette, lighting, exposure, everything's in focus. Good composition with triangles and straight lines leading from the blues at the top to the complementary golds at the bottom. The strongest feature is the beautiful lighting on both buildings and on the clouds. The weakest are the many distracting elements on the buildings, the wires, the clothes, air conditioners, plants growing from the roof. It just, to me, has too much of that to be an attractive photograph. So it might be worth the effort to try to clone out some of these. And the wire at the bottom especially should go.
Score is 21.
Next photograph is No Swimming After Dark, critiqued by Christy Goodsight.
I like the title of the image, and because of the title, I actually understood what I was looking at in the middle of the frame. I think it was just too much in the image to even know what's going on. I think it's fine that it's so dark that all the blacks are getting plugged up. It would have been, for me, really nice to see a tighter, I wouldn't even say crop, but composition when you shot the image of the animal in the water, maybe looking up with a lower angle. So you still get that sunset in the sky, and possibly you could still get the moon in the shot. I just think for what it's seemingly important because of the title of the image. The image was just too wide, and because of the silhouette, there's too much silhouette of everything going on. So I was a little, my eye just doesn't know where to go, and there's a lot to look at. So for me, I would have done a little bit tighter composition in camera to really focus on the animal in the water, and then possibly a lower angle so you could get more of the sky in it.
Score is 20.
Next image is Oaks, Santa Ynez Valley, critique by Elliot Crowley.
Yeah, every time I see the oaks out there in the Santa Ynez Valley, or driving between Los Angeles and Santa Barbara, and you see these lone oaks, they have such a wonderful silhouette against the sky or something like that. And there, you can just imagine and conjure up your own story involving those oaks. I think that this one satisfies that well enough, but it would be nice if there was something more special about these particular trees that I don't know, or in the lighting of the trees, or some other thing that made it worth stopping the car and taking the picture. Unfortunately, I think that this beautiful photograph suffers from the syndrome of I took it from the side of the road, and it appears to be a photograph of convenience and not necessarily a photograph of manufacture. And I mean manufacture in a really good way. And I'm not saying that this is a bad photograph. I'm just saying that it leaves me with that impression, because there isn't any real special lighting. There isn't anything really standing out with this particular set of trees in the Santa Ynez Valley. We've seen this all 1,000 times as we drive up to Solvang or Buellton or someplace like that. And again, every time I drive by them, I do think about them and think that there's a wonderful story of the Chumash living underneath these trees and bending their branches down so that they can harvest the acorns for the next generation. The next generation can harvest the acorns more easily. But I don't see that story here. I don't see the specialness about this particular set of trees on this day at this time with this framing.
Score is 18.
Next image is Painted Church Cemetery, critique by Ron Williams.
Well, this is reminiscent of Ansel Adams' wildly successful Moonrise, Hernandez, New Mexico. It's a classic study in black and white, or perhaps I should say silver, since some of these crosses seem to be painted with aluminum paint. The focus is good as we move from the sharp foreground to the softer background. The exposure works well, even though it's quite dark overall with little shadow detail, but that may be the mood the photographer is trying to convey. After all, it is a cemetery. The crosses, which the eye gravitates to, are properly exposed. And I guess that's what we're supposed to be looking at. In case of Ansel Adams, it was the moon that was the subject. Here, we're not exactly sure which of the many crosses we're supposed to look at. But it is, after all, a cemetery, and it has a nice cemetery mood to it.
Score is 20.
Next photograph is Pearls. This is critiqued by Christy Goodsight.
These are just always fascinating to look at. It's just so beautiful. I mean, just the circles you get from the water droplets and just the natural lines. It's just a beautiful image. I mean, it's you see them all the time, but I don't know. I just think the sharpness that was captured, the water droplets, kind of the positioning of it. I just think it's really nice, you know, where your eye goes right to in the center. It's a calming photo. I think if you'd had a spider in there or something that it had caught in the web, you know, that's what I would have focused on. And just in this picture, all I'm looking at are just repeating patterns and lines, and kind of my eye just dances around it. So technically it's, you know, I think it was really well done. This is super minor, but I can't stop looking at it. But there's like 3 little dots in the very top right corner. So I would have either cropped those out just a tiny bit, but that's super minor for the image. So I enjoyed this image a lot.
Score is 20.
The next image is Red Sky Day. This is critiqued by Elliot Crawley.
Yeah, the title, you know, makes me think that this was photographed recently with all the smoke in the air. And that makes it have some current topical information for me, but I don't know where this is, and I don't know what it is, and I'm intrigued at the shapes that the photographer has created by using the framing that he's done or she's done, but I don't see a subject in here. I don't, it's nice, you know, it's one thing to say, wow, we got this amazing light, I need to go take some pictures, but you need to have, I need to have, as a viewer of this, I need to have a subject to look at. I can't it's not just the sky for me. So I think there's room for improvement here. You were in an unusual place, obviously, and you had some unusual light going on. I wish you had found something that would give you a longer lifetime for the viewer.
Score is 19.
The next photograph is San Miguel de Allende Midnight, critiqued by Ron Williams.
So I looked at the camera that was used for this photo on Flickr, and it was a cell phone. It's amazing what cell phones can do these days, especially in the middle of the night like this. Of course, the laws of physics still prevail, and there's a lack of shadow detail. Still, the photographer's done a good job with the colors and reducing most of the blown out highlights. Many of the subjects are a bit chaotic, there's a story of the vibrant night culture here. So a well used title. To improve the image, I would suggest simply cropping out the garbage on the left and right, the propane tanks and the garbage cans.
The score is 18.
Next image is Summer Fun, critique by Christy Goodsight.
Beautiful light on this image. It's such a magical time of day when you're at the beach towards sunset and you get that little bit of hazy fog that comes in. So that makes me so happy when I see that. I love the silhouette. I love the ball in the air and his arm up in the sky. The one thing for me that stands out, and before I get into it, the composition's beautiful. I love how it's really dark on the right-hand side and it kind of gradually goes into a little bit brighter on the left. But the person looking, not the one throwing the ball, but the person looking up in the sky is just so distracting for me. It's that missing limb syndrome where like just sometimes the positioning of someone's arm makes it look like half the arm's not there. And then the way his foot is kind of kicked out, kind of pointed down. And that's always hard when you're shooting people that are walking or anything. Whenever you get that foot up in the air, like I never use a shot like that. I like when their foot's down. So it's just body positioning and that missing limb for me. And that could be a pretty easy content aware fill, kind of getting that guy out of the shot. But otherwise, really beautiful light, beautiful time of day, and love the silhouette of the guy with the ball in the air.
Score is 23.
Next photograph is The Taj, critiqued by Elliot Crowley.
Well, obviously, we've all seen this building before. I don't think that I've seen it with this wonderful soft light on it, which is an admirable quality about the photograph. But it's difficult to take something that is so familiar to international viewers and make it something that is different and unique and abstracted. There are a lot of good qualities in this photograph. I love the reflection in the water. I love sort of the off-centered angle of the pond and that sort of thing. I find the people on the left mildly distracting, but hey, they're going to be there all the time. I think the one thing that I really bump into is the closeness of the crop on the very top of the picture. And like Chrissy just said, that could be an easy content aware fill to just give me a little bit more sky up there. But the qualities that are really good in this photograph are the reflection, the soft light on this wonderfully textural building, the repetitive rhythm of the cypress trees that march down the side of the pond, the little whatever they are in the center of the pond that are reflecting in the pond as well, and the minarets, if those are what we call those minarets on either side. There's really great texture and light. It's just so familiar, it's hard to make it unique. And I think that that's what this suffers from, is the audience already knows what we're looking at. So that would be my encouragement to the photographer, to find the new angle, find the new something about this building. I know that's the hard part. Getting there is also a hard part, and I'm kind of jealous. I'd like to see this place myself.
Score is 22.
Next photograph is Up, Up and Away, critique by Ron Williams.
I'm wondering if another title might be more appropriate, something that would indicate conflict. Perhaps the title means that the bald eagle on the left is scared and lifting off for flight. So maybe something like fight or flight. I think that's maybe what's going on here. That might have been more appropriate. So it begs the question is, what's the story here? Technically, the image is good. Both birds are in focus and with a blurred background. Exposure and colors are good. Although my only suggestion is we're missing some shadow detail in the legs and upper wings of the two eagles.
Score is 19.
Next photograph is Vanishing Heights, Christy Goodsight critique.
It's a beautiful time of year, and I like the composition of the image. The Vanishing Heights, I'm having a hard time, kind of how I'm losing sight of the buildings because of all of the color that's happening on the lower third of the image. I'm not really focusing on that top part of the image. So I'm kind of battling what's going on in this image. So I think if possibly the crop or the positioning to really focus on losing sight of the buildings on the top would make the image a little bit stronger for me. Just the positioning, it seems more about the foliage and the colors than what's happening on the top. So I feel like I'm looking at two images in this image. But I do like the color. I'm not sure what's happening to make the top of the image go away, if it's like a blurred look or if it's some kind of fog. I'm guessing it's kind of blurred. So I think a different crop or a different angle to get that kind of losing the top of the image's effect would have been a little stronger for me.
Score is 20.
Next photograph is What George Says, critique by Elliot Crowley.
Yeah, I like this photograph. I like it a lot. It's a real document and a documentary kind of photograph. I don't know where we are, but I'm imagining it's Bodie or some other, historical spot. The words, you're immediately drawn to the words to read them. And we recognize that guy, and I recognize what I think are the Little Rascals in the other picture. And there's a wonderful sort of conflict between the Rascals and the first president of the United States. And this is sort of a natural diptych. And I think that adds to the interest of this photograph. We've got this dark side with the light photograph and this light side with the dark sign. It plays well. I'm happy with it. I don't know where we are or have any reference of that, but it's a fun picture. There's lots of great texture, and I think black and white was a good choice.
Score is 23.
The next photograph is Where Will This Take Me? Critique by Ron Williams.
An appropriate title that tells a story. The title could also have been It's a Green World. I have two suggestions for improving it. One during a possible future capture, and the other for post-processing. On the capture, too often we feel like we have to accept what's presented to us, and that need not be. Presumably the photographer could return to this area and have someone else with more appropriate clothing, something that doesn't clash so much, and someone that would walk, run, or skip, do something more dynamic along this path to make it look like you're having fun or doing something meaningful, not just kind of standing there off to the side. So then I would say retake this if you get a chance. On the post-processing, it's a green world, but there's enough of those brown splotches that they're a bit distracting. This is not the nature category, so you're free to clone out the brown and put some green in there and make it retail it a green world or something like that.
Score is 19.
The next image is Wren Chicks, critiqued by Christy Goodsight.
I feel like, Elliot, you're getting your lighting in darkness that you wanted on the.
I said the same thing to myself when I saw this photograph.
Yeah, I like the kind of spotlight effect, and your focus is on the birds. I'm not quite sure what filter was run on it to give it kind of this kind of hyper stylized texture on it, but it's interesting. It's different than kind of just your standard picture of the birds. I like that the one bird is looking up a little bit, and you do see its beak. It's super minor, but it's not perfectly centered, and it's not off to the side. So you've got a little too much space on the right side. So I would have cropped it just to give it a little bit more even space. And I think it could even use just a small amount more contrast to it. Not too much, but a little bit more.
Score is 21.
That's the end of the category submissions. We have accepted images.
10 accepted images. Broken Flag, Carrie Topliff, Dawn, Chris Seaton. I've got a fish, Ron Williams. Latvian Bridge, Stephen Sherrill. Layers of Service, Patty Gutschel. Lisbon Twilight, Bob Rottenberg. Summer Fun, Jeff Lipschitz. The Taj, Linda Kavanaugh. What George Says, Bill Banning. Ren Chicks, Walter Nauman. All right.
All right, that's the end of the accepted images. Our next category is people. The first image is All Wet, category critiqued by Elliot Crowley.
Yeah, this is, a wonderful sort of lifestyle photograph. We got a great expression. There's the gaze of the young child suggests that there's somebody else present and that sort of thing. What I'm missing from a narrative perspective is, how did he get wet? Where is he or she? Where in the world are we? So there's a lot of unanswered questions, a lot of clues that are missing from this photograph to allow me to get past the fact that it's a nice picture of a kid's face with a smile. I want more narrative to add to this.
Score is 21.
The next image is An Enchanting Tale, critiqued by Ron Williams.
A decisive moment of a photo telling the story of storytelling. Good choice of f-stop, shutter speed, and ISO for the ambient theater lighting. Very good color, exposure, and composition. Great eye contact and body language by all the participants. I'd say this is very well done.
Score is 22.
There's nothing like having a bunch of actors in front of your camera.
Yep.
The next photograph is Boy from Burma, critiqued by Christy Goodsight.
Beautiful portrait. His eyes are just incredible. Yeah, his expression's incredible, beautiful. For me, just technically, some things, it'd be nice to have a little bit more light on his face. And super minor, but the green, I'm gonna guess it's a tree in the background, is a little distracting. It's fighting for my attention. And I also think the crop is a little too, I think it needs to come in a little bit more because his head's looking a little bulbous on the top. And I think if you came in just a little bit more off the top, not a lot, but a little bit, it might have been a little bit proportional on his face, but beautiful portrait in terms of the expression on his face.
Score is 23.
The next photo is Breakdance, critiqued by Elliot Crowley.
Yeah, there's a lot of good action in this photograph. I know he's someplace, but I don't know where he is, and I don't know who he is. I'm trying to read his hat, and I can see the word maybe street on it, but I don't know anything about this guy, and I need more information, whether it's true or not. I don't really care. Or to finish the story, I don't know why he's doing this breakdance. I don't On the technical side, the highlights feel a little bit too hot for me. I'd like to see more risk for this guy. Maybe he's standing on the curb or some other place where there's more risk. I don't know exactly where he is. So I think that I would encourage the photographer to try to redo this, but to involve his whole body. So we see his left leg or his right leg as well as his left leg, and explore this more. It looks like this was maybe a one-off, and explore this more if this guy's willing, because if he's willing to dance for you like this, because he's got interesting tattoos and his clothes are, fitting with this idea. But I just can't put my finger on it. There aren't enough clues in this photograph to let me know who this guy is and why he's doing what he's doing and where he is. And those are all of our, as photographers, that's our responsibility, is to leave enough clues in the photograph so that the viewer can figure it out. I mean, you may know this person, and the photographer may know this person, and therefore they have a personal connection to this person, and the expression that this person's giving might be familiar to the photographer and all of the rest of that. But he's not familiar to me. He's not familiar to 99% of the viewers. So we have to constantly look at who the audience is and what they may need to understand the photograph. I hope that helps.
Score is 21.
Next photograph is Explosive, critiqued by Christy Goodsight.
Captured a great moment, the surf shot. I think the lighting's really nice. You're hitting some light on him. It's middle of the day, but still looks good. There's a lot of color in the image, which is nice. For me, it's my husband surfs, so he's in the surf industry, so I see a lot of these images a lot. So you captured a great moment, but we've seen this moment a lot. I'm wondering if the wave wasn't that big, and that's why we're cropped in a little tight to it. So if we saw more of the wave, that could have been interesting, but maybe it wasn't a big wave. And so sometimes cropping in can make that wave look a little bigger. I would say, if anything, crop in even tighter, maybe almost a vertical. I mean, that would be like a cover shot, more or less, would be kind of a vertical crop like that. Get a little bit more of the whitewash, so kind of shift him over to the right in terms of your crop, so you see more of that splash. But great moment, great timing. He's sharp, which is really good on that as well. So good job on that.
Score is 24.
Next image is Fire in the Hole, critiqued by Ron Williams.
Another appropriate title. The camera settings are technically correct. There are two primary subjects in dynamic poses, and there are two secondary subjects that are distracting, especially if you look closely on the upper left quadrant. There's another photographer taking a picture through a slot in the canvas. I'm wondering what kind of shot he got, or he or she got. So while the image tells a story, there's a lot of clutter here, especially on the right. Cropping might help a bit, but ideally the photographer should have moved to the right and concentrated on the fire rather than having all the clutter on the right-hand side.
Score is 20.
Next image is Girl in Blue Coat, critiqued by Elliot Crawley.
Yeah, I actually really enjoy this picture. I enjoy it because there's darkness, frankly. I like shadows a lot. I chase shadows. And I think that the texture on the little girl's coat is what really draws me in. And along with that, clearly that diagonal line that leads right to her head, and her placement in the photograph is absolutely perfect. If this was my photograph and I was trying to make it the best it could be, I would eliminate the person on the left and leave that child there alone, so that the child appears at more risk, because here she's safe. She's with somebody who clearly she knows. It looks like as though she might even be holding her hand, but it would have been an easy clone or healing brush to eliminate that person on the left and leave that child alone in a doorway with a beautiful blue coat on, and that color contrast works really well too. That would be the story. That would be the narrative that I would tell, is to eliminate the person and put the child more at risk. But I have a little dark side, I think. I don't know.
The score is 21.
Next entry is India Pink Lady, critiqued by Ron Williams.
Well, she's a lady and she's in a pink sarong and it probably looks like India. So yeah, that's the title, but what's the story here? She's walking with a cell phone in her hand, looking at the photographer, so there's eye contact, but it's not visibly very friendly. So it comes off to me as a bit of a grab shot. Everything is okay technically in spite of the overhead light. Suggestion for improvement would be to somehow get rid of that cell phone and the lock and chains at the upper right.
Score is 18.
Next image is Lady in Blue, critiqued by Christy Goodsight.
In the face, I love it. I love the blue shawl and the pin and kind of the delicate earring, but she doesn't have another earring on the other side, which is really interesting. Hats are always tricky to photograph people because you tend to get a lot of shadow in the eyes and the head. So if you are photographing people with hats, kind of putting them up a little bit, but you still kept some light under her, in her eyes, which was nice. So for me, I think it could have maybe just even a little bit more contrast would have been a little bit nicer, maybe warmed up the image just a tad. It's a little blue, but maybe that works fine, kind of with her expression and the blue shawl. So I really enjoy this image.
Score was 25.
Next image is Modern Life, critiqued by Elliot Crawley.
Yeah, here's a real opportunity to create something, because you have this woman wearing an unusual outfit, black and white outfit, in a background that is as well chaotic and black and white. So if the photographer could have eliminated the color in the background and still kept this woman full length in the picture and just had the I don't even know what this is, but still had this metal grating and all that kind of stuff as her background, it would have been a much better capture. The green of the background is the distraction, but creating a black and white color photograph is always unusual and always interesting. You would have just had the color of her skin as the only color in the picture where she's in a background like that. So eliminate the green and zero in on abstracting this wonderfully not noisy, but chaotic outfit in a chaotic background. They would have separated nicely anyway. Would have been my choice.
Score is 19.
The next image is Pre-Visualizing, critiqued by Ron Williams.
Well, I'm going to stir the pot a bit here to begin with. It was Ansel Adams who's thought to coined the term, but he called it visualizing. He did not use the prefix. It's come to be used as pre-visualizing, but if you think about it, pre is redundant. You can just visualize, you don't need to pre-visualize. So that's the end of that rant. In this case, there's a mystery since the person that's not looking directly at what appears to be the potential subject that the camera is looking at, which are the beautiful arbor of branches of the trees. The person instead is looking away from this potential subject. And so you have to wonder, what is it that subject is visualizing? If they're visualizing something in front of them, then shouldn't the camera be looking in that direction? So you bounce back and forth trying to figure out what's being visualized. So I think if there been a more of a closeness between the camera and the subject, and we understood what the subject was visualizing, that would have been a lot more meaningful to me. Disregarding that, the tree is a beautiful subject and the technical aspects are quite good.
Score is 19.
Next photograph is Shoreline Park Kayaks, critiqued by Christy Goodsight.
I absolutely love the color in this image. Just that muted green and blue is stunning. It's absolutely beautiful. As far of a person or people or portrait series, the person's so small in the kayak, so it would have been nicer if I'd seen them a little bit closer to shore. And then that second person farther out, I think is distracting. I don't think they need to be there. I would have made it more about that kayak that's a little bit closer to the foreground. I like that the rocks pointing towards them. Just for me, they're just a little too small in the frame, or maybe the title could suggest something differently about them being so small in the frame. So, but I really, really enjoy the color palette and kind of that moody look, and that kind of pinch of green in it is really nice to have too.
Score is 24.
Next image is Stalking, critiqued by Elliot Crowley.
Yeah, stalking. You know, Lee Friedlander was famous for sort of putting his own reflection or his own shadow in his photographs, but he did it in some sort of oddly compositional way that worked. And so when I looked at this photograph originally, I thought that this was a sort of a self-portrait. And I've done self-portraits of my shadow and of other people's shadows, and that's a very legitimate subject matter. I think that what's distracting in this photograph for me is everything else. I don't know where this fence is and why the photographer is there and why he or she decided to make the photograph. The subject appears to be the shadow. The background appears to be incongruous with the shadow. So I'm a little confused about what they're trying to say.
Score is 17.
The next image is Sunset Reader, critiqued by Ron Williams.
Well, an appropriate title, the image tells a peaceful story during these chaotic times. So kudos to the subject matter. I'm not that familiar with silhouettes. I think this is probably a good silhouette. It seems a little soft along the edges, but perhaps that's the way it should be. I'm not sure. When I look at this again, I have to wonder about the young man who climbed up here. He must have visualized a place to set up there from the ground, and then took all the effort and energy to execute that plan. So it's a nice little story. My only comment for improving it is to leave some space on the right-hand side where we're bumping up at the edge with that stump, if that was possible, to have a light on the right. a really minor detail. There's a little bump on the lower right. I don't see any reason why that should be there. And then the silhouette has a gap in it with the light shining through. I would clone both those things out.
Score is 22.
That's the end of the open submissions. We have accepted images.
We have 9 accepted images, all wet. Bob Rottenberg. An Enchanting Tale, George Wellick. Boy from Burma, Jeff Lipschitz. Breakdance, Stephen Lewis. Explosive, Ron Williams. Girl in the Blue Coat, Dave Basso. Lady in Blue, Bill Hillier. Shoreline Park Kayaks, Zoltan Pushkas. Sunset Reader, Spencer Dean.
All right, that's the end of the category. I think I may have called this the open category. That was the people category.
Yeah.
So next category is print submissions. The judges had hard copies of the prints and based their comments and scoring on those prints in hard copy. The first image is Burano. The critique is from Christy Goodsight.
Beautiful image and beautiful colors, beautiful composition in this image. This image was printed on a matte paper, which sometimes in this subject matter can look just incredible. But for me, it seems like the black point was just a little too much on this, and the blacks just got too sucked in. That matte paper just is like a sponge for black sometimes. So I think the colors and the darkness and the richness in this photo, either it would have been better to have maybe profiled it a custom way so you could get the colors to pop, or maybe even a glossier paper with a little bit more coating would have helped make those colors pop. But if you wanted a matte paper feeling to it and use matte paper, I might have tried a custom profile just to make sure those blacks didn't get too plugged up and those colors would pop a little bit more, because you really want to bring out the amazing colors in this image.
Everything is much more vibrant here on the screen than it was in the print.
Score is 23.
Next image is Fire Sunrise, critique by Elliot Crowley.
Yeah, I mean, this was a pleasant enough print to look at. Fire Sunrise sort of gives us a time and date of this. And I don't know that that is important. Hopefully this photograph would survive past 2020 or August of 2020 or September of 2020 and be a photograph that you would show over and over again. And it doesn't necessarily need to reference the fire. The fire did give you this wonderful lighting effect with the low contrast and the red hue highlights off of the water. Compositionally, I think it works. You know, we've got this wonderful crane in the lower third, and the sun is a nice counterbalance to look at, sort of more centered in the picture. I think it's a little off center. I might have centered it in the picture. The atmospheric perspective is well defined, and that gives a nice sense of place. So there's a lot of good things that are going on here. I think the title, I think you might want to change the title later on to something that would be have more longevity. This looks like it was taken down on Padero Lane, I think. That little pier.
Yeah. Score is 22.
The next print is Goleta Sunset, critiqued by Ron Williams.
Well, there are a number of pleasing landscape elements here. The God Rays and then the Sawtooth Ridge of the San Ynez Mountains. But the print's much darker than this and way too dark. So when I look at prints, I try to pretend like I'm in Farron Hall. And in Farron Hall, we look at them up close and then we put them up on the pedestal and look at them from a distance. So I look at the print that I receive about 2 feet away using good lighting to get an overall impression. And when I did that, the print was just too dark, especially in the lower half. The tree line is just a silhouette and Goleta Pier is barely visible. And the Pacific is nearly black except for a few midtones that brighten it up a bit. The eye thus moves up to the clouds and the sky. And there on the print, I found the color balance was problematical. So overall, if the photographer intended to convey a somber mood, then the image was successful. But to me, it doesn't have a lot of curb appeal.
Score was 17.
Next image is Webbed Fuchsia. And this critique is Christy Goodside.
Similar comments to the past few images. Obviously it's going to look a little more vibrant on screen when you get on print. I think the choice of glossy paper was a good one on this one. It really brought out a lot of the sharpness and some of the color. It did go a little bit darker and muddier than what you see on screen, but that's naturally going to happen. So either overcompensate for that if you want. But I think the glossy paper was a good choice on this image, and I like how sharp the flowers are. I like the composition and kind of the offset of the spider web in the image.
Score was 20.
That's the end of the category submissions. Accepted images.
We have 2. Verano, Bill Banning. And Fire Sunrise, Sally Berry.
That's the end of the categories. Accepted images. We have one unscored submission for tonight. It is a 1-minute video clip. It is assigned to Elliot Crawley for submission or for critique. I'm going to go ahead and play it, remembering that the video quality on Zoom is not always real good, but it will give us a reference point.
The Santa Barbara Museum of Natural History offers the Butterflies Alive exhibit, a fun and educational outing for the entire family. Walk through a beautiful garden while nearly 1,000 live butterflies flutter freely around you. The exhibit features a dazzling variety of butterflies, from local favorites to exotic tropical varieties. Learn about the life cycle and behavior of these spectacular invertebrates while observing them up close. Built in 2018, the Sprague Butterfly Pavilion features plants that butterflies love and comfortable spots for you to relax and enjoy the atmosphere. Its swooping steel ribs mimic the curve of a butterfly's wings, and its sandstone face was carefully constructed from local Santa Barbara rock. Butterflies Alive is included in museum admission. Come enjoy, and sometimes you can encounter interesting creatures that are not butterflies.
I think that was a really fun advertisement for the Natural History Museum. There's a lot of really great butterfly still shots involved in that. The voiceover seemed perfectly adequate for it. And I thought it was completely appropriate and very nice. I don't critique video that often, but I loved all the still shots in there, and some of my favorite one was the butterfly on the wall with the shadow of the butterfly on the wall. That was my favorite, a single shot in there. But I thought it was perfectly well done and should bring people in to see some butterflies.
Great. Well, that brings us to the end of our exhibition tonight.
It was interesting to see all of the photographs that people are taking around Santa Barbara. This is my first time doing it, and I appreciate the call, and thanks for letting me play along.
Well, we hope to continue to see you be involved with the Camera Club as we move on into this new virtual world for the time being, at least. Thanks.
Oh, thank you very much.
Take care, everybody.
Hey, Christy, it's so great to see
Bye,
you,
good to
Christy.
see you, Elliot.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So long,
Bye.
everybody.